Sean, this is a really good question. This is something I've been thinking about in the last couple of weeks. I have it written down in my notepad here even. Sean says, what's the worst case scenario for Bitcoin? So this ties together here in a few different ways for me, because I was just listening to a podcast, and it was with Robin Sayre. I think it's Sear or Sayre. Robin Sayre. And he had Bob Burnett of Bitcoin Barefoot Mining on there. Barefoot Mining. And he was talking about the scarcity of block space. And he did some very simple, quick math to say, this is how many transactions are in each block. So let's bring this up, because let's do a little bit of a deep dive into this. I was going to talk about this in the future, a future show, but I think why not today? So if you look at each block here on mempool.space, you can see how many transactions are in each block. Each one of these blocks only has so much space available in it. Is my audio okay here? I'm just going to take a little break here. But let me know if you guys can hear me okay, because it seems like I'm a little bit choppy on my end. So just let me know in the chat quickly if everything's good, or if I need to make some alterations here. But anyways, so all these blocks are just a bunch of transactions, right? If we click into this one, you can see that there was 2,992 transactions in here. And you can see them all, very transparent. You can see the fees, you can see where they went to. But the thing that we're focused on here is how many transactions were in each. So 2892, this one only had 1,546. This one had 1,655. I'd say when it's full, when there's lots of demand for people wanting to send Bitcoin, when there's lots of people waiting over here in the mempool to get their transaction confirmed, I'd say that the majority of blocks would have like 4,000 transactions. So his very simple math said, okay, there's 4,000 transactions in each block. There's approximately this many blocks per day, and there's approximately this amount of blocks and transactions per year. And it was a very minimal amount. I forget what it was. But he was saying that the blocks, the chain, the network is going to become so scarce that people are actually going to be buying or directing hash power, selling futures on block space, where a miner would say, this is how many blocks we're going to be able to compile and assemble, construct, and we'll leave this amount of block space for your transactions. And so I think that the worst case for Bitcoin in that scenario would be that the big countries, the big corporations like the US, like BlackRock, like MicroStrategy, they start getting so much hash power, they start getting so many blocks that they control what information, what transactions are on those blocks, that it makes it unusable for certain people. And they basically just discriminate who can and can't use Bitcoin layer one. I think that that's the worst case scenario for Bitcoin. And what I was thinking about in my own head was that if you think about the internet, which is very similar to Bitcoin, it's a protocol. And if you think back to the early days of the internet, when it was pretty much the wild, wild west, and people might say that was bad, but nobody controlled it. And if you think about email, now with Google, with a few big players, it was Hotmail for a while. Now it's mostly Google. But they basically, even though it's a protocol that anybody can build on, they've basically captured email. Where even when I'm using Proton Mail, an email like Gmail, if I sent an email from Proton to somebody with a Gmail account, Gmail automatically throws that into spam. And I look at it the exact same way as what I think could happen with Bitcoin eventually, where in the very early days here, anybody can use it. There's lots of space. Anybody can build on it. But as we go forward here and as it could become more centralized, and not necessarily by countries and companies owning Bitcoin, but by them owning access to block space, if that makes sense. So think of it like me trying to send a Proton email to a Gmail, and they're saying, nope, that's spam, which basically means that I can't use Proton Mail in a lot of ways. So even though they're building on top of this open protocol, email, there's been a couple key players who have basically captured it and forced people to use their services. So I do think that if you look at BlackRock, even though they only have 500,000 Bitcoin, not only, but that's very insignificant in the grand scheme of things here, but they invest in a lot of Bitcoin mining companies, and they have not majority ownership, but significant influence and ownership in a lot of these miners. So in 10 years from now, if they keep going after this, not necessarily the coins, but the hash rate, they're going to be able to control who can transact on Bitcoin layer 1 and who can't. And they'll sell block space in the future. So that's my worst case for Bitcoin, is that it ends up like the internet, which has been captured, and it ends up like email, both protocols, but that have been captured basically by roundabout ways. Like Gmail didn't come onto email and said, we're the only people that can do this. They just went fast enough, they went hard enough, and they basically took controlling interest of email, a protocol that anybody could use. Like I could look at the email protocol and I could start my own email service tomorrow. But because Gmail, Yahoo, Hotmail, they kind of have like the grasp on it, they can say this is spam. Any email coming from your mail is spam, which is essentially forces people to use their services. So that's my worst case for it. It has nothing to do with price. It has everything to do with who can and can't transact on Bitcoin.